Hi guys, and welcome to our second of 3 videos on the digestive system. In this video, we're going to go through the pharynx, the stomach, and the accessory organs of the GI tract. So let's get started. So we've just talked about the mouth. We've chewed our food, mixed it with saliva, and we've had the tongue push it back to the back or to our throat. Now, we've already mentioned the pharynx before when we talked about the respiratory system, divided into 3 regions: behind the nose, nasopharynx; behind the mouth, oropharynx; and then behind the larynx is the laryngopharynx. So what happens is we chew our food, we swallow it, it heads down the pharynx, and then it's going to meet up with the esophagus. Now, the esophagus has no role in digestion or absorption. It's just going to move food from your mouth to your stomach. It has all 4 layers. We have mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, and as I mentioned in the last video, it's different than other parts of our GI tract in that it's both a combination of skeletal and smooth muscle. And unlike most of the GI tract, this particular organ has adventitia, which, if you recall from the last video, this is just a layer of connective tissue. There is no epithelium that surrounds it. Now, one common pattern you're going to see in the GI tract is we have sphincters at the start and end of an organ to help regulate foodstuffs in and foodstuffs out. So as we regulate food from the esophagus down into the stomach, it has to go through what's called the lower esophageal sphincter. Okay, it moves through the diaphragm, through the esophageal hiatus, and then it's going to connect to your stomach. So it doesn't just flow in. As the muscular movements come down, they're going to hit the sphincter will relax, and now the foodstuffs will go into the stomach. So here we can see there is an upper esophageal sphincter, but for us, we're not going to be too worried about it. It's going to go allow foodstuffs to go down the esophagus, and then we go through the esophageal hiatus, which is this guy right here in our diaphragm, and meet up with the stomach, basically just underneath that diaphragm. Now, the lower esophageal sphincter is also important clinically because if it is weakened for any reason, such as in pregnancy, because we're like pushing the baby up a lot or the stomach up a lot, it can lead to what's called GERD or esophageal reflux, because if the sphincter doesn't close all the way like it usually does, it's open a little bit, then all of some of the hydrochloric acid that's inside the stomach can pop up into your esophagus, and it's not built for that, which is why you feel heartburn. And it's called heartburn because it feels like your heart is burning because your heart sits anterior to it. So now we're in the stomach. The stomach is a really important place in terms of digestion because this is where we kind of go from mushy food to liquid. We use acid to break the food down into more of a liquid and into smaller components. And we also here have protein digestion through a lot of the enzymes that are released inside the stomach. Now, the stomach has 4 major regions to it. Where it meets the stomach, this is called the cardia, right underneath your heart. This big rounded part is the fundus. And the area where it meets the duodenum, which is our first part of the small intestine, this is called the pyloric region. And then everything else is the body. Some important things to look at here. Inside the stomach, we have multiple ridges and folds called rugae. They allow the stomach to expand after a meal and go back to its original size. We also have the 2 sphincters. We mentioned the lower esophageal sphincter at the top, and then to regulate foodstuffs out, we use the pyloric sphincter at the distal end. We also have the greater curvature right here, which is the larger curve of the stomach. And then we have the lesser curvature of the stomach. This is where that lesser omentum is located. Okay, and we'll be able to see that more in kitty. Now, the stomach obviously has all 4 layers. Its mucosa is modified to not only secrete lots of different substances, it has a lot of these what we call gastric pits that are lined with a bunch of different types of cells that secrete a bunch of different types of things that you will learn more about in physiology. But it's also more prepared to handle that really, really acidic environment. The submucosa and serosa are unremarkable. There's no differences there. But the big difference is that the muscularis, you might have caught it, has 3 layers. So we have our longitudinal layer, which goes the length of the stomach, the circular that goes around, and then we have oblique. And the oblique, the reason we have this 3rd layer is because what your stomach is doing is it's churning and mixing to liquefy your food. So we wanted to have an additional layer to really get that mixing. So before we move on to the small intestine, we need to talk about the pancreas, liver, and gallbladder, because they're going to be secreting into that small intestine. The pancreas is like a corn cob that sits just behind your stomach, and it has an endocrine and exocrine function. We've already talked about the endocrine function. We have not. We will be talking about the endocrine function. Too many similar lectures today. So we'll be talking about the endocrine function in a couple of chapters in terms of insulin and glucagon. Once again, not going into near the detail you will see in physiology. Our focus this chapter is the exocrine function, which is the production of what we call pancreatic juice. It's a mixture of enzymes and bicarbonate, which helps neutralize the stomach acid, so it doesn't burn your small intestine. That is made from another population of cells, which makes up most of your pancreas, called the acini or acinar cells. The endocrine portion are sort of these sequestered areas called the islets of Langerhans. Now, in the pancreas, right here, we can see, so all these little things that look like little flowers, those are the islets of Langerhans that contain the cells that make insulin and glucagon, regulating your blood sugar. Everything else are acini cells, which make pancreatic juice. And that pancreatic juice gets pushed into the main pancreatic duct and then out into the duodenum. Some people have an additional duct that branches off that goes superiorly also into the duodenum, and that's called the accessory pancreatic duct, versus the main pancreatic duct is through the middle. This pancreatic duct meets up with the common bile duct from the gallbladder. So their secretions are going to both come in together and meet up with whatever just came out of the stomach. Now, the gallbladder and liver are kind of intimately connected. The liver is a very, very large organ, roughly kind of like this shape, that sits basically taking over the entire upper right quadrant of your abdomen. It's connected anteriorly to the abdominal wall through the falciform ligament, and it's made of a few different types of lobes. We have the right lobe and the left lobe, and then we have the caudate and the quadrate lobes that are going to be seen from the posterior surface of the liver. Okay, so let's kind of take a look at what we're talking about. So here's the anterior view of your liver. You have the smaller left lobe, larger right lobe. There's that falciform ligament connecting it to the front. Gallbladder kind of peeks out underneath it because it's located on the back of the liver. We have our caudate lobe here, our quadrate lobe, which is inferior, and then we can see the ligamentum teres, which on the back of the liver, that's how you can separate right from left. You can also see the inferior vena cava running through here because the liver is intimately connected to your cardiovascular system. Remember, the blood flow from the digestive organs has to go in through the hepatic portal vein. It kind of gets filtered in the liver, and then it goes back out through the hepatic veins into the inferior vena cava. Now, if we look at the liver under the microscope, obviously made of a ton of cells called hepatocytes. Hepato is the root word for liver. So hepatomegaly means an enlarged liver. These cells do a lot of different things. They have roles in metabolism. They have roles in, they secrete things. Your liver does a lot of stuff besides create bile. It detoxifies, it helps with the formation of blood components, and it has a role in blood sugar management. But for right now, we're going to focus on its role as the producer of bile. So inside the liver, we have what are called portal triads, which are small little branches of a bile duct, the hepatic portal vein, and the hepatic artery. They're just like the little tiny continuous branches of them, okay, on a microscopic scale. As they get bigger and bigger, they're obviously going to flow into those particular vessels. So these triads are arranged around a central vein in sort of this pentagonal structure. And what happens is the bile is produced there through the bile canaliculi, which means little canal, into a little bit larger tubes called bile ductules until we reach these two here. So your liver, as I try to show you, your liver is going to sit just on top of this. So we have the right and the left hepatic ducts. So they're the ones that are the big draining vessels into, or out of, the liver. They're going to come together and form the common hepatic duct, which meets up with the cystic duct coming from the gallbladder. Now, bile from the common hepatic duct can flow into the gallbladder for storage, and then the bile can flow out of the gallbladder and out of the common bile duct into the duodenum. Anytime you see the word common, like we talked about in blood vessels, it means two vessels have come together to form one. Right and left hepatic ducts form the common hepatic duct. The common hepatic duct and the cystic duct form the common bile duct, okay? So this is the flow of bile from the liver to the duodenum. It can flow directly through the common bile duct, but we usually store it in the gallbladder, if we have one, so we can get an extra jolt of bile if we have something really fatty. Because what bile is it's made up of water and cholesterols and bile salts, which help what we call emulsify, or take a really long chain molecule of fat and break it down into much smaller pieces. Because our enzymes could work on that long chain fatty acid, it would just take a really long time. So we cut it up into more manageable pieces with the bile. There is a communication process from your stomach to the gallbladder as to whether or not it needs to release bile. Oh, I just ate a bunch of French fries. Oh, I need bile. In some people, though, the salts within bile start to crystallize and they form these gallstones, okay? And these obviously can't get through that cystic duct. And so they build up in the gallbladder or they get trapped in the cystic duct, and you have pain, upper right quadrant, nausea from too much fat that's been undigested. It changes the color and texture of your stool if you have too much undigested fat. So when that happens, unlike with kidney stones, we can't really pulse these away. So we just remove the gallbladder, okay? And this is actually a still from a laparoscopic surgery. It's done laparoscopically. And if you guys are interested, I have a video right here showing you the whole process. It's quite quick. So if you're interested in how gallstones are removed or the gallbladder is removed, please go ahead and check this out. So once again, just a quick little recap. Your liver produces bile, which is stored in the gallbladder. The pancreas produces pancreatic juice, and it produces our blood sugar hormones. And then we have our stomach that takes the stuff that we just chewed up and turns it into a liquid. So in our final video, we're going to cover the small intestine and the large intestine, the rectum and anus. I'll see you guys there. Bye.